You're watching TVC Breakfast. Now, the federal government has approved a further easing of the lockdown imposed on states as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Here are the highlights of the Monday's briefing that you will need to keep in mind. All right, joining me now via Skype is Managing Editor Ayodele Adio of the Avalon Daily. All right, now Ayodele, good morning. It's good to have you join me now. Now, some people were quite happy yesterday when they got the news of more easing out, because no one was sure how it's going to be, especially when you see the numbers, the confirmed cases of COVID-19 going up. But some people feel a little bit at ease. But talk to me basically, what concerns do you have that government is opening up the economy and opening up things while the numbers are rising?
Well, I mean, like I've always argued here, Mike, the government has very little choice than to open up the economy. So it's always been a matter of when. It's been clear, the chairman of the task force, the SGF, had clearly stated that they do not have the capacity, to hospitalize every patient that tests positive for the coronavirus. The country lacks the health infrastructure to manage a spike in infection. So, I mean, the reality that we're confronted with is a situation where it's either we kill our economy and at the same time also kill citizens from the infection and from apprehension and from anxiety and all of that, or we take a risk with citizens' responsibility to maintain precautionary measures as stated by the task force and then open our economy up in phases. And I think this is the decision that the government has made, because the truth is it cannot afford huge palliatives. It cannot afford its economy to be shut for a long period of time. So hard as it is, I think this is just the only feasible alternative that the government has.
What would you like to see be put in place before final opening of things, especially the aviation and schools and churches opening in full-fledged?
I think churches are already going to open in full-fledged with this directive. It's just schools and the aviation. I think the aviation is going to open on the 21st, and then schools much later. I think what I would want to see, basically, is a standard operating procedure where these organizations are going to maintain a certain standard that will prevent the transmission of this virus. What the government can do also is to ensure that they put something like an attaché in most of these institutions or these organizations to enforce compliance. So if it's a church that has, take for instance, a 5,000 capacity, the government has somebody there who is taking notes and ensuring that they are living up to the standards as agreed by the task force. And in the event that they fall short of those standards, that attaché that the government has can recommend the closure of that institution. So everything is going to border on the responsibility of the leadership of these institutions, whether they are schools or churches or religious organizations. It will border on the amount of responsibility that they take on themselves and the measures that they put in place to ensure compliance from their members. And I think if that happens, we might be able to midwife this crisis.
Nigerians are quite concerned that government may not have the capacity to instill compliance, especially with the standards and benchmarks or the advice that has been, or prescription as the case may be. Now, especially when you talk about the issue of curfew, curfews, during curfews sometimes, we just see only checkpoints. Everybody drives through. There is no restriction. There is no stopping anyone. There is no turning anyone back. It's just a checkpoint where, okay, there's a presence, there are presence of security officials, but then everyone is just driving through. What concerns do you also have in that regard? Capacity?
I mean, first of all, if we admit to ourselves that the government does not have the capacity to enforce or ensure certain compliances, we also are admitting in the same vein that the government has lost legitimacy to enforce the rule of law. And that cannot be said of any serious government. So I do not believe that the government has lost or lacks the capacity to enforce certain strict compliance or regulation. What I do know is that some of the institutions responsible for these enforcements have rather used this as an opportunity to make quick monies from citizens. And so, like you rightfully said, the police officers who are supposed to ensure that these checkpoints are mounted and cars are not supposed to pass when it's curfew time have been seen collecting bribes. They have been interstate lockdown for the past 3 weeks, yet people have been traveling around the country. In fact, it is common knowledge now when you go to motor parks and you want to travel, you are asked to pay an extra amount so that that extra amount is going to be used to bribe police officers across the road. And that's disgraceful and embarrassing. So what government needs to do, unfortunately, I'm not sure it can do it now because this corruption has been endemic and has been with us for a long time. Otherwise, all it needs to do is to rein its men in and ensure that they do their job and follow the law to the letter. And if there's not going to be interstate travel, nobody should dare travel.
All right.
If there's a curfew, if you're caught after the curfew time, you should be made to face the law. It's as simple as that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ayodele Adio, for your time on the program.